Welcome to Listen Up Lilith. My name is Lilith and it's time to listen up. Today we're going to finally talk about patterns. We're actually going to get into patterns for costumes. Now, the pattern I'm using today, just so you know, with this mini-series, I am working on my Mami Tomoe cosplay, and today I'm going to be referencing the pattern to make the underbust corset for this, because that's the only pattern that I need for this one, because everything else is using old patterns. I screwed that up. So I'm gonna get into patterns. I'm gonna do this as quick as I can because I waffled on last time that I tried to film this. So we're gonna try and do this as quick as we can so that you can go into knowing patterns, knowing what to look for, and knowing where to work with this and what you're seeing when you get a pattern. I will be referencing patterns that you get from an envelope in a shop, but there are options online to get patterns in PDF form, in some things that you can find on Pinterest as well, but they are a lot more difficult to use, and I will explain why in time. So let's get into it. This is a pattern. When you go to the shops, when you go to here we have Spotlight, Joanne, Michaels. This is a pattern. It comes in an envelope like this. It will have the finished garment on the front. Sometimes it will have close-up details of these patterns. This is just a simplicity pattern. It may change design from company to company, but this is typically what your pattern envelope looks like. On the front, like I said, finished product. On the back, it gets scary and there's lots of tiny numbers and all that stuff. So what are we looking at with this project? So on the back, once we have the garment pieces, we're looking at that. We're like, cool, we like this. What are we going to do to make this? We're going to turn it around and we will see sketches. 9 times out of 10 we'll see sketches. Sometimes I've been caught out, but that's on older patterns. You'll find sketches of the reverse of the garment, and this is really good to look at because you may look at this and go, oh, I love that dress. I want to make that dress just the way that it is. Turns out you look around and it's in 2 pieces. That is an important thing to look at because that may change how you design or work with a garment. In this case, we only care about the corset. Just to go down what all of this is, very quickly, this is all in French, so we don't care about that right now. Well, if you are a French speaker or a reader and would like to make things difficult for yourself, go ahead and read the French. If that's easier for you, even better. But I'm a basic white girl who only speaks English, and I don't do that goodly, so I will just go down this what I can. So this is going to be all the information you need before you even open this thing. It will explain the fabrics that you need, or the recommendations of the fabrics that you need for this outfit. It will explain, and of course you can reference the garments are listed A to D in this one, so A, B, C, D, and it will explain what fabrics would be recommended for these pieces. Next down, it has something called notions. Those are the additional pieces that you need to construct this piece. So, for example, this set A, garment A, requires 1 hook and eye, that is a closure. I'll explain those later. 1 22-inch zipper. That's important. That is important to know because that is how you're closing the garment. Whether it be from the front or the back, it's probably the back. And then since I'm using C, since I'm doing the corset, I want to read that the notions for C is that I need 22 grommets, 5 1/4 yards of 1/4 inch wide boning. I'm not doing that math myself. I have a giant stack of plastic boning downstairs, so I'm like, I'm good. But yeah, you can use that. And yes, patterns, we'll talk about meters, we'll talk about your fabrics, how much you need and stuff in yards or in inches. Thank you, freedom units. Google can help you convert that. It is so easy to convert these things. But I remember yards as being 90 centimeters, 91.5 centimeters to a yard. I said centimeters, not meters, right? Yeah. So if I was getting 5 yards of a fabric, I know that I need 4.5 meters. 4.5 meters, yeah, roughly. But that's just me because I got the math ADHD. Anyway, now these 2 sections here, these 2 big chunky ones with all the numbers, we're just going to quickly skip that because we're going to go to sizes. because this bit in the middle, this is our reference as to what size we need. Sizes on patterns will humble you. Will absolutely humble you. Okay. I may be a like a generic clothing. When I go out and buy clothing, I'm getting a size 16. On this, I'm either an 18 or a 20, which is absolutely humbling. But that is because I have tig old biddies, so if I want something to fit, I make it fit at the tig old biddies and the hips, and then we bring the waist in from there, because these, just like clothing that you buy off the rack, are crafted and made, printed for generic sizes, for the generic size. It doesn't have the tailoring, it doesn't fit to your specific body size or anything like that. That is up to you later, and we will talk about that later. Be patient, this is just the pattern, okay? This is the building blocks. So yeah, we are looking for the sizes specifically. Now what you want to do is keep in mind where those sizes are, because when we go up, this is our body measurements. The body measurements on Simplicity. On McCall's, I know that they're, let me find my reference one. So I've got my McCall's pattern here. This is what they look like. Again, same thing, where it's got the brand and it's got Yaya Han in the finished garment. On the back here, on the envelope, the flappy bit, this is where our size guide is. Taking measurements will also be another video, we'll talk about that later, but once you have your measurements you can go to this and figure out where you're going from there. Okay? That is what we're looking at. Speaking of sizes for patterns as well, an important thing to note is that patterns actually come in 2 different sizes. Now, I'm not talking about the 6 to 22 down here. I'm talking about they sell it in 2 different sizes, so 2 different size packs. So I'm pretty sure it's A5, their A5 pack, or on here it says R5. It will be, they'll sell 1 pack in a size 6 to 14, and then on other packs it is 14 to 22. Now keep that in mind, because that will throw you off if you're not careful. And you can find it on the front up here. Simplicity is really good because they put all that really basic information up the top here, so when they stack it one by one, you're flipping through it and you can find it right here, right on top. We love that. So keep that in mind, because you may accidentally buy the wrong size and your size pattern is not in there. I've done that one too many times, which is why I have too many packets of cosplay patterns that I can't use. Anyway. Okay, moving on, I've taken my measurements and I know that my measurements match to the size 18. So what I do, I'll grab a highlighter and I will literally just mark where those sizes are so that I can always refer to that. And I go up and down, or I go down the entire line of numbers, because they will all match. If I try to just follow it without the line, I lose it and I get things wrong. That's just me. Okay, so I've scribbled on the back of mine to find all the information I need for these garments. Now this, I have scribbled all the way down because these are my sizes for all, for A, B, and C, because I might make A and B later. But yeah, C, all my information that I need is down here, so I've just kind of highlighted around it, because otherwise if I scribble on the whole thing, I'm going to ruin it. Yeah. So that is all the information that is on the back. That is what you need before you even open it. So keep that in mind. Bring a calculator if you're not using freedom units. Yeah, and that is where we go from there. Now we're going to open the thing. Okay? So when we open it, this is, okay, I screwed up because I did this video yesterday. And I talked about this already, but yeah. So everything is kind of repackaged, so I'm being very careful about this. Forgive me. All of this stuff is your pattern. All the rice papery stuff that is folded up and compressed like that, that is all your pattern stuff. I got extremely lucky. I didn't know that with this pattern. The pieces for every garment have been printed on separate pages. That is an absolute lifesaver, because with other patterns, that is not always the case. Sometimes it's the same pattern design all mishmashed, like there's different pieces all mishmashed together, so it may be a bit of a hunt to go and find the ones you need, but what we need at first is this. This is the thicker paper, typically a slightly lighter colour. And we need this one, the first one before it gets into any instructions, okay? So we want the side with the sketches on the front. We want that because now we're going to find what pieces we need for our pattern and what sizes. So that is a sketch of the front and the back. Over here is the pieces, like every single piece that is included in this pattern is detailed out here. What I've done down below it is a key of the different pieces, what they are named and which garment they go to. We are using pattern C, so I'm looking for all the pieces that have C on it, and I've just circled those so that I know those numbers. Those are the numbers of the pattern pieces. And I've also just drawn around which shapes they are so that I know what I'm cutting out and what I'm putting together. Now, like I said, I did this yesterday, so I've already gone ahead and cut out my pattern pieces. And yes, I've actually backed these pieces because the paper is so thin and so easy to rip. I mean, you can see I've already done that. I need to fix that later. But I backed it with masking tape just to make it a little bit stronger. Just so I can reuse it, because as this is an underbust pattern, if I like it, I'll probably do it again. And then it's easier to store as well, so I know which pieces are mine. And I can go ahead and I can draw some of the notions that are on the front of this on the back as well, because yeah, the possibilities are endless. Now, so I've already gone ahead and cut my pieces out. I've already backed them. What we are doing, I'm just going to go through the rest of the front of the first piece, like what the hell are you looking at? General directions is just kind of giving you some real basic information on what you may expect and what may not be described in the instructions. So these, like for example here in the section of the pattern, it has details of the symbols that are on the pattern. So for example, it talks about the grain line. That is this line that's going down. That is the way that your fabric moves. It's the weave of the fabric. This is, yeah, I wish I could explain it in a better way, but if you want the fabric to stretch, and you want it to stretch up or out, that is the way you need to think about it, because if you put it on the bias, it's going to be fucked. If you put it diagonal, you're going to have a problem. I will explain that in detail later, but yes, it's going to explain what these like shapes and stuff are. So like what these are notches. That is for matching your pattern pieces together. You don't have to cut these out of the fabric. Keep that in mind. You don't have to cut these out of the fabric. You can draw them on with a Sharpie or pencil. I use a white pencil, like a white colored pencil with a white wax pencil, just so that, especially on darker fabrics, because I use darker fabrics a lot. Yeah, it also talks about seam allowance. Seam allowance is the fabric is kind of, I call it dead space, is the space from that you kind of lose when you're sewing the panels together. You want a little bit more seam allowance so that the garment is stronger, simple fact, so that it's stronger and it stays on very well. It stays together and it doesn't break. But this is important to note if it does have seam allowance or not. So it may look like the pattern pieces are enormous when you cut them out, but then you realize, I mean, you're going to lose a bit on the sides anyway, a bit all around it anyway. So yeah. And this is important to know because some patterns don't come with seam allowance. Keep that in mind. I will show you an example. Okay, so I have my front centerpiece from the Simplicity pattern, and then I have my front centerpiece from another pattern that I've used in the past from RNA Black. Now this was a free pattern for quite a while. I actually had a relatively successful TikTok being like, hey, these corset patterns are free. These ones don't have seam allowance. And how do I know this? Because it was in the instructions. Because I read the instructions. Now, you can definitely figure that out, especially by lining them up one by one, and you see this extra space here. That is crucial. So that does tell me that this center panel piece is going to be a little bit smaller. I might even go ahead and like sketch it on the back to show you what I'm talking about. But what I want to do with this pattern piece is I need to, when I sketch it onto the paper, I then need to go around it again and add that seam allowance for safety, because otherwise this thing is going to be tiny and it's not going to fit me. These are both cut to my size, by the way, so they should be matching the same size. But yes, one does have seam allowance, but that does mean the panels will end up looking smaller. Okay, so I have sketched on the seam allowance. So this is what the pattern looks like on the front. Don't you dare. Shh, I'm watching live stream. But on the back, I have sketched out that 1.5 centimeter seam allowance. That shows us that's how much they're expecting us to sew it down. I don't always do that, but as you see, that is fabric that will be missed, basically. So if you end up cutting something like this pattern on the salvage edge, which is that like nasty edge, which is the sides of it, which kind of honestly I use every so often, I make sure that that's lined up where the seam allowance is going to be. And don't worry about this bit on the edge not having it. This line here explains that it's on the fold. That is something that you put on the fold. Okay, moving on back to the general directions. I'm sorry, I'm waffling. We're already at 16 minutes. Oh my goodness. But yes, so these are your symbols that you'll find on the pattern pieces. It will also say on some pattern pieces and some garments that you can either adjust it or shorten it to length. This will to fit your sizes. This is where it will explain how to do that or what you should do to do that. And it's likely going to explain like you need to cut in the pattern pieces and then add onto that. That is some mischief mastery, which I've never had to do, luckily, because I fixed that in the mock-up. Cutting and marking the garment, it's basically telling you how to basically cut out your pattern pieces. It's just giving you some guidance. You don't have to follow this, you can do it however you want. I mean, it's telling you to press the pattern pieces, circle your cutting layout, blah 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 blah, pin everything to the fabric, the double thickness, single thickness. It's talking about all that. This is a guidance of how you should do it, how you could do it, or at least how the artist in this place, the creator of the original garment and pattern piece that will be Firefly Path, has told us should be done. Yeah. There's also special cutting notes. I've never touched them. That's just me. Moving on to the other side of this piece. At the bottom here, this bottom stretch down here is basically showing us how to cut out all the pattern pieces. This is according to the yardage of fabric that it has told you to go ahead and purchase. This is how much you need for the garment. This is what they recommend, but of course, again, this is just a guideline. This is a recommendation based on what they've provided. Because all hell breaks loose as soon as you're trying to match it to a patterned fabric. Believe me, that cutting guide is telling you basically on a plain fabric, or if you really don't give a damn about matching patterns to the panels. Yeah, so it's literally just a guideline. It is just telling you, hey, this is what we recommend. All hell breaks loose once you add in extra factors. I know, it's chaos. But one other thing to note, at least in the simplicity section, it tells you over here, these two different colors here, that is important to note. They will, your pattern pieces on the instructions may come in different shades, or it may have simple patterns on it or anything like that. That is telling you what sides of the fabric you're seeing. So we're going to pull out the Harlequin fabric again. So just as an example, this would be the right side. This is the side that everyone is going to see. And this is the wrong side. See what I mean about that nasty salvage? This is the wrong side. This is the inside of the fabric. So that's what it's talking about. Right sides and wrong sides. Okay? Doesn't always matter when you're using really basic fabric, like basic plain fabric like this, where it's all just one color on both sides. But it will matter when you're using different fabrics. We will talk about fabrics later. Okay? This is all just the pattern. Okay, one last thing before we even go into the instructions is one final key of, it's kind of another index of terms and like information you need to know before you even start sewing, before you even get into it. It's just explaining what some of the terms in the instructions mean. So on this one in particular, we have a little section here that's giving you advice on working with sheer fabrics, because that is what this pattern calls for with garment A and B. It's also just good to know if you haven't worked with sheer fabrics before, because they also will give you enough stress that will make you blow steam like a dragon. yeah, as well as down here, this is, I can't work with my natural lighting. This is again just sewing methods that are defined below. So when it talks about doing something like, for at the top here, a French seam, or if you're gathering, working with interfacing, it's going to explain what that is, or the basic instructions for that method down below, down here. And it will also show you, it's got this key of the pictures, the lovely example pictures, which my son is blocking out, as to what you're going to see on the instructions. So that's what you will see. So you can come back and refer to this when you need it. Also up here again, it's got that fabric key as to what you're going to see. You're going to see the right side, the wrong side, the interfacing, and the lining. Lining. I'm not even going to get into lining. Lining is a separate piece of fabric that makes it more comfortable to wear. Okay? Yeah. And hides all your mistakes. Yeah. Now that we are familiar with the terms and the conditions and all the things that go into building this garment, what we need before we even start, we can move on to the instructions, the actual instructions. Now, Simplicity are great in that they put all their pieces for those separate garments together, so they are consistent. It's like reading a story. Lucky for me, all the instructions I need are condensed onto 1/2 of this page. So let's do a little origami. So the Ask Auntie section, which is a little bit overwhelming with how tiny it is and how much information is in there, it breaks down, actually, honestly, quite a few steps all in one go at a time. But that is, what I would do if it's overwhelming for me. Again, I grab my highlighter and I break it down. I grab a couple of highlighters and I'll mark like the first step, that step, and yeah, so on and so forth, just to make it a little bit more manageable and less overwhelming to read. And that goes all the way down. Again, this is their instructions for building that piece. Ignore the fact that it goes down to D right there. And then on the other side, it's accompanied by examples of how it should look. Now you see all those different colors and everything like that, like it said in the fabric key. That is why we have that reference, okay? So I'm going to end up going and spending a good couple hours reading this over and over to make sure that I've got the same things. Or for me, as someone who's done corsets a million times, where I'm going to change information because I will not be following this information because I hate doing the bag method on corsets. We'll talk about that later, or I'll find another reference. Yeah, this is just the instructions that they give you. Now, before we go cutting our regular fabric, once we've read the instructions, we're going to grab something like a bed sheet or some other fabric that is super cheap and easy to work with, and we're going to do a mock-up. We're going to talk about that in the next video because this is already 23 minutes long and this is just as waffly as it was before. So thank you so much for listening. I do hope that this helped. I know I should put disclaimers at the end, but just as a reminder, patterns are made for a universal size. It's very generic, and the tailoring comes down to, like, making it fit you better, comes down to doing what we'll talk about in the next video, a mock-up, okay? The other thing that you need to know is patterns are frustrating. They are absolutely frustrating to work with. It is, especially if it's your first time, it can be very overwhelming, but just a reminder, take it slow, make it work for you. You've got this. All the instructions are in there. Take your time, do a mock-up, okay? So, thank you so much for watching. If you have any requests, if you have any, if you want to know anything else, more about patterns or anything like that, please feel free to use my comment section, even like a different version of Reddit or something, to put your advice or anything that I missed down there. If you have any other questions that I can answer, I'll do my best to answer them when I can. Yeah, so let's get on to a mock-up. Bye guys, happy crafting!